And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. I have to tell you, as I mentioned on the morning show, it almost seems like it's not real. I have been so worked up. Well, worked up is probably the wrong way to put it. I've been so engulfed in trying to resist everything that the Biden-Harris administration had been putting on that after election night, of course, we had our own little party here at Cowboy State Politics headquarters, and it almost didn't seem real. And here we are a week out of the presidential election. All of the appointments are going on. In fact, we may get to a couple of them in today's program, and it still doesn't exactly seem real. But it is, and it's absolutely amazing, and I can hardly contain myself. Well, before we get going on today's program, a couple of program notes. This afternoon, or actually right after this program, I'm doing an interview with Harriet Hageman, so I'll have that to play for you tomorrow on the podcast, as well as tomorrow during this program. We'll see how long it goes. I still don't have any idea how long Harriet and I are going to talk for. That's always kind of up in the air. You never really know how much time she has. But I'll have that interview for you tomorrow. Also, on this morning's show, I want to continue with the conversation about Weston County. I don't really think that we've actually dug that as deep as we need to into that. There are a lot of different things that are going on there, and I just want to kind of give you a recap to start out with. I've got a couple of sound bites lined up, and so we'll begin there. And then after that, some different news pieces that I found this morning and last night while I was doing show prep, that there are significant reasons why a lot of people didn't vote for the Democrats this time around. I mean, there's the obvious ones that they've absolutely destroyed the economy, and that all of us are paying $7 a bucket for butter at the store and $5 a loaf for bread, and I don't even know. At this point, I just go grocery shopping and I don't even pay attention to the price. I know that I can't buy what I used to, and I just buy what I absolutely think that I need. So anyway, there's a lot of reasons why different constituencies didn't vote the way that the Democrats thought they would, and there's a big one, and we're going to talk about that. But we begin this morning with more Weston County stuff. Now, if you were listening during the morning show, Joey and I talked about some of the intricacies surrounding it. And here's the biggest takeaway that I think that we should all look at with this Weston County election business. Yes, there was a crime committed. Actually, there were a couple of crimes committed. But the biggest portion of it was extreme incompetence. And by extreme, I mean the employee that you hire that absolutely knows nothing, that is completely unteachable, that it doesn't matter how many times you show them how to do something, they still can't get it right. And when you give them specific instructions on what to do, they still have no idea what they're doing. That is the level of incompetence that we saw in Weston County. And so I'd like to begin at the beginning and just give you kind of a recap of where we're at with this whole thing. Now, it began, of course, on election night. The results were coming in, and Becky Hadlock, the Weston County clerk, absolutely incompetent Weston County clerk, went to bed. Now, you might think that that's a little strange because you're the county clerk and you are the one that is responsible for all things election in your county. And yet she went to bed. Now, most of the state, most of the country for that matter, was wide awake at that time, but not Becky Hadlock. Nope, she went to bed. Well, the error, or we're just going to go with the term error because I don't really think that it was an error. I mean, that it was kind of intentional. There was an error that started all of this, and then it was kind of intentional after that. But it was the Secretary of State's office that noticed that there was a tremendous amount of undervotes happening in 3 races in Weston County. So many that it was absolutely out of the norm. That there's no way you're going to have 2,200 undervotes in a county that you have a representative that is as popular as Chip Nyman. I don't think that there's anything that Chip could do to get that many people to vote against him. I mean, he would probably have to pay people not to vote for him. And even then, I don't even think that it would work. So Secretary of State tries to get a hold of Becky Hadlock, and she's asleep. So Chuck has to send the Weston County Sheriff to go get her out of bed. And it wasn't until that point that Chuck said, hey, there's some really, really strange results coming out of your county. Can you tell me what's happening? And according to the reporting, Becky Hadlock said, oh, no, there's nothing to see here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Don't even look at the other hand, and everything is fine. Well, everything wasn't fine. So the next morning, the Newsletter Journal, the paper there in Weston County, had finally picked up on the story. They saw the election results and were like, holy crap, what's going on here? So they sent a reporter to the courthouse to talk to Becky Hadlock. And at that point, the clerk said, there's nothing to see here. This is a protest vote against Chip Nyman. They're mad about they're absolutely mad about the county commissioner thing and trying to add a legislative seat. And there's just nothing that we can do there. It's just a protest vote. Well, that was a lie because at that point, Becky Hadlock absolutely knew that there was something wrong with the election results because she had spoken to Chuck Gray the night before. Then that afternoon, the Newsletter Journal sent another reporter to the courthouse to ask Becky Hadlock some more questions. Now, here is what happened during that one. Let's see here. Newsletter Journal interview. So here's the audio from that second interview. This is the second time that the Newsletter Journal sent a reporter to the Weston County Courthouse.
Becky, can I ask you a couple questions about the election? Is the House District 1 race count accurate?
ES&S is working on that.
Who is?
ES&S.
ES&S? Are any other races compromised?
No.
Who is on the canvas?
Okay, all right. So hold it right there. They're asking about the House District 1 race. And the question is, are any other races, is there an anomaly in any other races? And you heard Becky Hadlock say, no. The truth is, the same problem persisted in both the county commissioner's race and a school board race. So right there is where the covering up of Becky Hadlock's misdeeds started. Well, actually, they started a little bit before then, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. So let's continue with the interview from the Newsletter Journal.
Board?
The canvassing board, it's Doug Jory and William Fuller.
And William?
Fuller,
Just 2 of them?
that's all that's required.
And when will they meet?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, there's another crazy one, right? So the canvassing board, that's the group that meets to certify the election results. And Becky Hadlock says, yeah, I'm not really sure when they're going to meet. Yeah, I don't really know. I haven't set that up yet. That is strange in and of itself because Becky Hadlock cannot complete the 2024 election without them. So that's a meeting that you would have set up ahead of time. And yet Becky Hadlock is saying, no, I have no idea what's happening, and I don't know when those folks are going to meet.
You don't have a date, time, or place?
don't.
Okay, so no, she doesn't, and she doesn't have any idea what's going on. So that's the essential parts of the Newsletter Journal interview. Now, remember, this is the second time they went and talked to her, and the story kept changing. Then let's see here, I heard about the story on Wednesday, I believe. So I called Becky Hadlock to ask her my own set of questions. Here is that phone call.
County Clerk's Office, this is Becky. May I help you?
Hi, is this Becky Hadlock, the Weston County Clerk?
Uh-huh.
Hi, my name is David with Cowboy State Politics. I was wondering if you had a couple minutes to visit about your election results.
Sure.
When did you first notice that there was a problem with the House District 1 race?
Secretary Gray called me the night of the election.
Boom! There's her changing her story already. Now remember, the story is very different from when she talked to Chuck Gray, than when she talked to the Newsletter Journal the first time, and when she talked to the Newsletter Journal the second time, and now a third time, she's changed her story again when she talks to me. Okay, so you didn't see, when the results came in, you didn't see a problem with them at all, or?
I didn't, because there were several races that had a lot of undervotes.
Okay, there were several races that had a lot of undervotes. Now, the soundbite that I just played for you from the Newsletter Journal, remember, she was asked, does this appear in any other race? And her answer to that was no. So you're referring to the county commissioner race?
The commissioner and also the school board.
Okay, so what is in other elections, what's the normal amount of undervotes that you would see in a Weston County election?
Oh, I don't want to comment on that because I'd have to go back in my other elections to find that.
Okay, all right. So when is your
it's normal for people to undervote?
When is your canvassing board going to meet?
Tentatively Friday at 2.
Okay, so it's is that the normal time? Because I know here in Sheridan County they're going to meet today, but is that normally when they meet? Yeah, today would have been Thursday.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So do you expect to certify the results, or are you going to do an investigation into why there were over 2,000 undervotes?
We will certify the results, the correct results, yes. We won't certify unless we have the correct results.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. So there was more to that phone call, but that gets you the nuts and bolts of it. So you can hear when she's talking to me, her story continues to change. Now let's back up all the way to the beginning. And this little tidbit I got from Secretary of State Chuck Gray. Here's what happened. Becky Hadlock printed a set of ballots that were incorrect, and basically on the first column, and you're going to have to remember back to when the last time you voted was in this past election. Generally, there are 3 columns on each ballot. In the first column, all the way at the bottom, was the House District 1 race, and Chip Nyman was the candidate. Well, his name was all crunched up next to a line, and that was kind of crunched up next to the title of the race, and it appeared totally different than the rest of the ballot. So Becky Hadlock had a whole bunch of those printed, and then she realized her mistake, corrected it, and had a whole bunch of other ballots printed that were absolutely correct. And here is where the first part of the cover-up started. She mixed the two together and then sent them out. And my theory on this whole thing is she thought that the ballots that were correct would cover up her mistake on the ballots that were incorrect, and nobody would know the difference. Well, the truth is, the election machines, because she hadn't calibrated them, because she hadn't tested them right, because she hadn't performed the test in the correct amount of time, she waited until the day before the election, the tabulation machines read a spot on the ballot where no marks existed. And so all of those votes were recorded as undervotes. Now, that doesn't explain this next part, because there's a whole nother wrinkle to this story. And this, my friends, is the bombshell. This is the one I played on the podcast yesterday. It is absolutely amazing, because think about how many questions you've asked about all these tabulation machines and the voting machines and all of that. How many questions have you asked? How many times have you been told, none of that really happens? And, these machines, they work pretty good. It's not possible to vote for someone and then have your vote be counted for somebody else. That doesn't happen. That's not a thing. Well, listen to this next soundbite.
On top, well, the machine is programmed to say the dot in this circle is supposed to be for Ed, the dot in this quadrant is supposed to be for Marty, and they were rotated. So some people, were voting because the line said Marty, but it was actually counting that for Ed because the way that it was rotated and it shouldn't have been. Well,
so wait a minute. In the county commissioner's race, if you voted for Marty, that vote was counted for Ed. And if you voted for Ed, that vote was counted for Marty. In other words, every single time we've been told that we are out of our minds, that we're crazy, that that's impossible, that could never happen. Here you have the county clerk in Weston County, Wyoming, admitting that that is exactly what happened in the county commissioner race. This is a stunning admission, and it is it's so big that this one, it contradicts all of the lies that have been told across the country, at least in reference to those states that use ES&S machines. This is absolutely amazing. So not only were there ballot printing issues, not only was there an attempt to cover it up, not only did Becky Hadlock change her story over and over and over, she also screwed up the election for the county commissioners, and about 2,000 people, give or take a little bit, had their vote absolutely disenfranchised. Your vote did not count for the person you voted for, at least until the canvassing board met. And then all of the ballots were recounted, and it was determined that they figured out who voted for whom and how it was supposed to go. But the biggest crime out of all of this is the cover-up, and it is disenfranchising all of the citizens of Weston County because they have no confidence whatsoever that their vote even matters. They have no confidence that if they mark a spot on the ballot, that it will be counted for that candidate. That's the big crime. And unfortunately for that one, there's no recompense. There's no way that we can fix that situation. In fact, I don't know that it's possible. The only way that you can fix that is to get rid of Becky Hadlock, put some measures in place that would prevent this situation from happening in the future, and to absolutely make sure that there's more oversight, that the policies and the procedures are followed. But in terms of Becky Hadlock, I've never seen that level of incompetence. Weston County citizens, you have every right to be absolutely irate. We'll have more after the break. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble Room, Tom Kelly from Wide Right Turn, and the lovely Christine from The Hair Affair. And of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, Well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy state politics microphone high atop the media in Wyoming. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, having more fun than I could possibly ever have, and frankly, more fun that should really be allowed by law. Well, welcome back to the program. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. The studio line is 307-374-8989. If you want to be part of the program, I went ahead and opened up the studio call-in lines because I need a favor from you. Directly after I finish today's live broadcast, I'm going to be interviewing Harriet Hageman. So if there's anything you want me to ask our fantastic Congresswoman, go ahead and give me a call. Let me know what you want me to ask her. Again, the phone number is 307-374-8989. Now, as you can imagine, there are a lot of things that are big question marks, according to the Democrats. You know, they have no idea why they lost the election. Many of them thought that Kamala Harris was an amazing candidate, that she was going to take the election. It was going to be a landslide. Donald Trump didn't stand a chance. Now, Donald Trump, it's that Project 2025, and he wants to take away every abortion and pass a nationwide abortion plan. It was as if they hung all of their election hopes on the issue of abortion. And they completely disregarded how much money people are paying at the grocery store for a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a thing of butter. Certainly Joe Scarborough doesn't know how much butter costs. I'm sure you heard that soundbite. But they completely disregarded everything that is important to American citizens. I firmly believe that most people vote with their pocketbooks. And if the economy is out of whack, if they are paying a tremendous amount for fuel and for heating and for groceries, it does not bode well for the incumbent. And that exactly was the case with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. She could say the word abortion however many times she wanted, but that was not going to change the facts that they had destroyed the American economy. And there are a number of reasons for that. They are socialists. And I mean, I guess when you get down to it, that's probably the biggest reason. They believe in larger government programs, more government spending. They're fans of this idea of modern monetary theory. Now, this is modern monetary theory. Basically, it means that if you're the people that print the money, you can print as much money as you want and not worry about inflation, so long as you monitor it with interest rates. But the problem is, there is an economic principle called the Overton window. And the Overton window, and you hear a lot of people use this term, but basically that's kind of the tipping point where you can go one way or another. You're at the top of the bell curve, right? You don't really know which direction you're going to go. If you're going to go down the downhill slide, you're going to go off the other side, but you're kind of teetering on the top, and your next decision is going to determine which way you're going to go. And there's only so much time you have in an economy when you have rampant inflation to make that decision. If you continue to print more money, inflation continues to escalate, prices continue to rise, and pretty soon the price of goods is going to be rising faster than you can print money. And that's what happens when you get to hyperinflation. The same thing happened in the Weimar Republic. It happened in ancient Rome. It happened in Zimbabwe in 2008. And there are several more instances. And by the way, when we're talking about inflation, one of the things that appreciates in value when inflationary pressures rise is gold. And the company that I have come to know that I really, really like is freedomgoldusa.com. If you think that you want to invest in precious metals, go to freedomgoldusa.com/David. You can fill out a little form there, and you can get a free consultation to find out if gold and silver is right for you. And there are a lot of reasons why you might want to do that, because gold and silver, precious metals, have never been worth zero. Have you ever noticed how when, well, and let me explain it this way. This is a better idea. This is a better way. Let's say you have a gold coin and it's 100 years ago. What could you buy with that gold coin? Well, the answer to that is probably 2 pretty nice suits. Now, fast forward 100 years to now, and you have that same gold coin. What can you buy with it? Well, the answer is 2 pretty nice suits. You see, it's not the value of the gold that goes up and down. It's the value of the dollar. And so if you want something that is always going to have value, gold and silver have never been worth zero, then you might consider gold and silver. I have a small amount of silver. I'm not a rich guy, so I can't buy, a whole truckload of gold like Bob Menendez. But I do have some silver coins, and it's for that very reason. Well, anyway, so the Democrats, they're printing money like it's going out of style. Inflation is going through the roof. The economy's in the crapper. And they think that people are more focused on social issues like abortion. Well, that's not at all the case. And the truth is and let's see, I've got a piece here that I think is absolutely fascinating here. Let me just scroll through my stack of stuff. And actually, the stack of stuff is on the computer right now because I got a problem with my printer. Let's hear. Here it is. From the Times of London. Trump wasn't the candidate who made women feel bullied and repulsed. And this is, you remember, and I'm sure you heard this on the news, that more women are going to vote for Kamala Harris. More women are interested in abortion. They really care about that, and that is going to decide the election. Well, Camilla Long with the Times of London has a very different approach. Let me just read you the opening piece of this, and I quote, I wasn't going to write about the election. Emily Miletus, libtards, we've all heard enough. But there was one question that hasn't been answered. Why didn't more women vote for Kamala Harris? She positioned herself as the most female-friendly presidential candidate ever. At the Democratic National Convention in August, the speeches focused relentlessly on how Madam President would, quote, restore abortion rights nationwide. Amid homecoming queens for abortion banners, an activist told us how she was raped by my father after years of abuse. And the thing is, there were all these stories about how we have to have abortion. I happen to disagree with that. I believe that every life is sacred, and that we don't have a right to kill another innocent human being. But at the Democratic convention, people were in floods of tears. It was an electrifying moment. Quote, "This is the year of the woman globally," sobbed one delegate, and a man in a cowboy hat. Yet, abortion barely figured as a point of interest in the exit polls. In the swing states, about 11 per of the people said it was the most important issue. Climate change came in even lower at 7%. Immigration and the economy all played bigger. Why did the Democrats think they could win on reproductive rights? Or let me phrase it differently. Why did they think women wouldn't care about immigration and the economy? There is a point when the party of anti-sexists starts to look a bit, well, sexist, doesn't it? I'm not just talking about the candidate, a woman famously hired simply because she was a woman, or the party itself. Harris is its second top failed female pick. The last one was also a global disaster for women, an egomaniac patronizing enough to think she could run on a platform, and wouldn't it be great to have a woman in charge? I'm talking about how not a single one of Harris's policies in the end actually spoke to women. How exactly would she rewrite Roe v. Wade and make it into law if she became president? When the obstacle is the Supreme Court, what should she do? What could she do? What did she actually think about abortion? Does she actually believe that in full-term abortions? I mean, there were so many questions that she didn't answer, and not a single one of them related to the things that actual people care about. It's like I started the program. Real people, normal people like you and me, we focus on bread and butter issues. The total Freudian slip there, but it's absolutely the truth. The price of groceries, the price of fuel, the price of heating, those are the things that we have to worry about each and every day. And if we're not going to have a president that's going to focus on those, we're not going to vote for him, especially when the economy is in the crapper. So there were a lot of reasons why women didn't vote for Kamala Harris, why an overwhelming number of men voted for President Trump. I mean, and it's for a very, very simple reason. And the answer to the question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I would argue that today you're better off than you were 3 years ago. And President Trump hasn't even done anything. But when the majority of Americans ask themselves that question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? The answer was an unqualified no. There is no way that you are better. In no way are you quantitatively or qualitatively better. Your quality of life has not improved. Your economic situation hadn't improved. And your freedom situation definitely hasn't improved. So, no. And because Kamala Harris, and she actually refused to answer that question a couple of times, but there were a lot of reasons why people didn't vote for Kamala Harris, and probably the biggest one is that she was a terrible candidate from the very beginning. The very definition of a DEI hire. I mean, really, Kamala, in that piece from the Times of London, said she literally was hired just because of her gender. She didn't have any other qualifications, but that wasn't enough to get her elected president, and thankfully, it never will. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but it's hunting season. And one thing that you can be absolutely certain of is while you're tromping around in the boonies, at some point, it's going to snow. A lot. And you definitely want to make sure that you keep your feet nice and toasty warm. The best way that you can do that is to order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The program is only going to continue to expand from every county in this state to every state in this country. It's Cowboy State Politics. Shockingly, a number of media outlets had a ratings plummet fest after the election. And I mean, I don't know why you would think that they wouldn't. They've only been lying to you for about, 10 years about everything concerning Donald Trump. But PMS, NBC, and the Communist News Network saw their ratings in the toilet after Trump's landslide victory. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble now, pretty much everywhere that you can find me. You can find me everywhere. Well, the phone lines are open. The phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If you want to be part of the program, just go ahead and give me a call and tell me what's on your mind. Maybe you can help me with that Harriet Hageman interview I have coming up in about 45 minutes here. Well, MSNBC, PMSNBC, and CNN's ratings plummeted following Trump's landslide victory. And I quote from the Daily Wire. MSNBC and CNN's ratings plummeted after President-elect Donald Trump's landslide victory against Vice President Kamala Harris was announced in the wee hours of the morning. That's my little editorial commentary there on Wednesday after the election. According to the Nielsen data, the viewership on PMSNBC on Thursday analyzing Trump's win brought in a total for all day long, of 596,000 viewers. And in the coveted age demographic of 25 to 54, a grand total of 71,000 viewers. 71,000. That's it. Over on CNN, coverage of Trump's election victory throughout the day on Thursday brought in a whopping 419,000 total viewers, and in the key age demographic, just 91,000 viewers. Primetime coverage of both networks was even worse, with PMSNBC host Alex Wagner experiencing her lowest-rated show ever, and Chris Hayes' show scoring its worst audience since May of 2016. Year over year, PMSNBC's numbers were also down 23%, while CNN's audience was down 40%. Meanwhile, wall-to-wall election coverage of Trump and his electoral and popular win was a boom for Fox News, whose viewership on Thursday, listen to this, was around 2.6 million, with 375,000 viewers watching from the key age demographic. The audience for Fox News was up way more than 60% compared to a year ago. Election night coverage on Tuesday gave PMSNBC its first ratings victory ever over CNN, with an audience that was basically cut in half to 5.1 million from the audience it had in 2020 of 9.6 million. However, both networks failed to even come close to the monster viewership of Fox News on Tuesday night of 10.3 million people. ABC, NBC, and CBS also experienced a drop in viewers from the audience they had for their election night coverage of then President Trump and Joe Biden in 2020. The truth is, my friends, is that you can't lie to people for years and years and years and expect your viewers to continue to listen to you. I mean, that's just not possible. I have no idea who in their right mind would think that. But they've had a lot of evidence to back that up because, for almost a decade, they've been lying to American voters, and they're still on the air, albeit a very, 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 very small portion of the electorate. But they're still on the air, and I would expect that you're going to see some layoffs at PMSNBC and CNN, and I don't see how you couldn't. Well, let's go ahead and talk to Jerry in Rock Springs. He's got some ideas about the Senate. How's it going this morning, Jerry? What's on your mind?
It's going really good. Just watching your show, enjoying Trump as our president. And I just think the Senate and their choices for the new leader, they let us down.
Oh, yeah.
I don't believe any of them are really constitutionalists, and I think if what I read was correct, Loomis and Barrasso, their choice was no choice at all.
Yeah,
for Thune.
Yeah, I saw an article where they're going to vote for John Thune, and the lovely Christine and I were talking about this before I came on the air this morning. That both John Thune and John Cornyn, they were very, very much opposed to Trump. And the very first thing that happens after a landslide victory, we're going to have Trump as our next president. What does the Senate do? They go to pick some guys that were opposed to everything that Trump did in his last term. I mean, it's exactly how those swamp creatures run things. I mean, they are all a bunch of redcoats.
Yes, they are. And their choices is going to do nothing but block what the American people want.
Yeah, and I took some heat during the election for saying that John Barrasso was kind of the devil we know, that he's not really all that conservative. And here is a perfect example of what I was talking about. You have a perfect choice in Rick Scott to have a conservative leader of the Senate so we can actually move the conservative movement ahead. And what does John Barrasso do? he votes for the red coat. I mean, it's right out of his playbook, and it always has been.
Yeah, I would have loved to seen Ted Cruz or Rand Paul even as a choice, but Rick Scott is definitely the best choice that I've seen so far.
Yeah, and I've got a story, and maybe I'll hit it right after we're done visiting. Britt Hume on Fox News, he's got some reasons why he doesn't think that Rick Scott has too much of a chance. And I don't know. I mean, I like Rick Scott. I think he's far more conservative than both Thune or Cornyn. But with the amount of shenanigans that are being played in the Senate, I don't know that there's any hope for him. Though I continue to support him. So what do you think I ought to ask Representative Hageman when I've got her on the phone in a few minutes?
I really don't know, other than what she thinks about the choices that our senators have made.
Yeah, I think that might be an interesting question, and I don't know how she'll respond because that is one of her colleagues from Wyoming. So anyway, we'll thanks for the call, Jerry, and I'll make sure I ask Harriet about the Senate.
All right.
All right, back to the program. If you want to be part of the program, give me a call at 307-374-8989. That's 307-374-8989. Now, while I was talking to Jerry, I remember the soundbite that I had prepped for this morning's show, and it's Britt Hume talking about one of the reasons why John Thune may not be, or excuse me, see, I'm all confused now. Why Rick Scott, there we go, may not be that great of a choice for the Senate Majority Floor Leader. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what he has to say.
They're all making their pitches in the media this week. But interestingly, Trump World has been making an extra special push for Senator Scott. I'm curious if you think that's going to help him with his Senate colleagues who actually have to vote him into the position, or whether there's a chance it backfires.
You got Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and others who are supporting Senator Scott. I actually think Senator Scott's kind of a long shot. The reason being that, for example, he was the head of the National Republican Senatorial Committee in the 21-22 election cycle, raised a ton of money.
No one can remember back that far, but yes.
Well, as you may recall, the Republicans had a very disappointing result in those midterm elections. Remember the big red wave was supposed to come, it never broke. And there were a lot of questions about where all that money went, why it was all spent so early in the process, and how much of it was spent by Scott to boost himself. And I don't think he's close to a lot of senators. And I think this pressure from Trump World to support him is likely to backfire. Senators are jealous of their authority, their powers. They don't like to be told what to do. And I think that the other two candidates are more likely to win. I couldn't tell you which one, but I think Scott's a long shot.
So maybe.
Well, I tend to agree with him. I do think that Rick Scott is a long shot, though he is decidedly the better candidate out of the three. He's way more conservative than both John Thune or John Cornyn. And it is a huge disappointment that John Barrasso and Cynthia Lummis have lined up again, behind such a redcoat. And it never fails in Wyoming. We elect people that tell us that they're conservative. They knock on our doors and they say, "Look at me, I'm Mr. Conservative." They even got the cape, right, with a big C on it, and a little shield that says, "I'm Captain Conservative." I hate abortion. Taxes are too high. I love my guns. You should vote for me. I'll fight for you. And then we do. And then they go to Washington and they do exactly the same thing that John Barrasso and Cynthia Lummis are doing. I mean, we get bit in the tail every single time with this. Just infuriates me. That's why I say that they're redcoats. Anyway, moving on. So Pocahontas has made a return. I know. Weren't you just waiting for her? So she is saying that Trump has already committed a crime. Now, he's not even in office yet. He's just the president-elect. And I don't know that there is any way he could commit a crime because he hasn't really done any official acts. But Pocahontas is back. And I quote, Senator Elizabeth Warren said Monday that President-elect Trump and his transition team are already breaking the law on a presidential transition. Quote, Donald Trump and his transition team are already breaking the law. Warren, Warren, yeah, whatever. You know, her name on this program is and always has been this.
We have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas. You'll have plenty of those Democrats coming over and you're going to say, no, sir, no, thank you. No, ma'am, perhaps, ma'am. It may be Pocahontas. Remember that.
Remember that. It may be Pocahontas. Anyway, Pocahontas was responding to a Saturday report from CNN that said a conflict of interest pledge included in the Presidential Transition Act was, in part, keeping multiple transition agreements from being submitted by the president-elect team to the Biden administration. The Presidential Transition Act instructs candidates from major parties to join in memorandums of understanding with the current president, as well as the General Services Administration, so staff may get their hands on relevant resources such as facilities, documents, executive branch employees, and national security information, and in the period between the election and the inauguration. Those agreements also feature an ethics plan. Last month, Lyon Representative Jamie Raskin raised concerns in a letter to Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance over their campaign's failure to enter into the presidential transition agreements with the federal government. Raskin warned that the delay could have an unfavorable impact on the transfer of power in the upcoming year. They're just trying to find something that they can use to fight against President Trump. I mean, these are Democrats, and this absolutely proves what I was saying up to the election, that the Democrats don't look at a loss the same way that we do. We get our tails whooped in an election. We're likely to say, wow, you know, the voters didn't agree with us. Maybe we're wrong about that. Let's take another attack. Democrats don't do that. In fact, what Democrats do is they just back up and they try to figure out a way to move their plan ahead one more time. I mean, it's just they just go back to the huddle, regroup, and then they try it again. They never stop. They're never going to quit, and to assume that they do is absolute folly. Let's go to Mike over in Weston County, see what he's got on his mind. How's it going, Mike? What's on your mind?
The question I've got for our wonderful representative is, what's the status of the Utah Attorney General suit for that $18.5 million of federal land?
All right. That's a good question for her, because Harriet is, I mean, I did a story, I guess it was last week, or maybe we talked about it on the morning show, about how there's been some talk of Cynthia Lummis being tapped for Secretary of the Interior. I think Representative Hageman would be a much better choice.
Oh, she'd be fantastic, I think. I completely agree with that.
So you're from Weston County. Why don't you give me your take on what happened there with the election?
Well, I think that our clerk messed up big time, quite frankly, and from my perspective, it's something that we've known about for a couple, 3 years. Her incompetence is unbelievable. And I think that's what it really is, but something needs to be done to change the laws, I believe, in terms of the Secretary of State, in my opinion, needs to actually write the procedures and manuals, not allowing the local clerks to do it. I mean, this whole concept of local control is great, but on something as important as this, I think the Secretary of State, and especially Chuck Gray, is far better at writing the procedures than they are.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that the biggest takeaway, there's a couple of them really, but I think the biggest one out of that whole situation is that it was a case of massive incompetence. That, I mean, Becky Hadlock is incompetent from the beginning to the end. At the beginning of the show, I don't know if you were listening or not, but I went through all of the sound bites that I have of Becky Hadlock changing her story back and forth, trying to cover for herself, trying to explain away her actions. And the whole thing, it really got started by her screwing up a set of ballots that she had printed, and then she tried to cover them up. And then, you know, it's like you got to remember the lie you told at the beginning if you're going to continue lying. I mean, and unfortunately, we don't have a recall statute either. So, I mean, as far as getting rid of Becky Hadlock, I'm afraid you guys are stuck with her for 2 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're correct. So that's a major issue. We need the legislature to look at, and I'm pretty sure they actually are starting to do that. I talked with Chip Nyman the other day, and he thinks that there's a piece of legislature that's going to be going in to deal specifically with the county clerks and the procedures and stuff and how that works.
All right. Well,
I don't know what the details are, but that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that I mean I do think that the bar needs to be set really, really high. If you've got a case that warrants getting rid of a politician, it would take a pretty high bar to get rid of it. Otherwise, I think that you would have a slew of frivolous attempts to recall an elected official. So, I mean, it would take a lot of votes, and I don't know how that would work out, but I think I'm in favor of a recall statute myself.
Yeah, I think there needs to be one, and I agree with you. It needs to be difficult, but not impossible.
Absolutely. All right, Mike. Well, thanks for the call. I'll go ahead and make sure I ask Representative Hageman about that. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number is 307-374-8989. It's 307-374-8989. We got about 10 minutes left in the show. Go ahead and give me a call and let me know what you want to know from Representative Hageman. I'm going to interview her in about 20 minutes. Well, let's see here. We got 10 minutes left in the program, so like 25 minutes. But go ahead and give me a call if you want to. The phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call. So in what we were talking about before the call was the John Thune, John Cornyn, and hold on just a second here. We're going to go to a quick break, and then we'll be back. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone. Sorry about that little interruption, live radio, and I thought I had a phone call coming in from the good representative a little bit early, so that's why we had to go to break real quick. But anyway, getting back to the program, we've got about 7 minutes left in the show, and I really think that our elected representatives in the Senate are really letting us down, John Barrasso and Cynthia Lummis. So if I had my choice, I'd have them vote for Rick Scott, though I think that, that's kind of a long shot. I sort of agree with Britt Hume on that one. But there's another piece here that caught my eye. Quote, D.C. Republicans are already gunning for a chance to control Trump's last term, and it relates to John Thune and John Cornyn. And I quote, voters gave Republicans control of the U.S. Senate, but what the party does with its power largely rests with one anonymous vote. Republicans are set to vote Wednesday for the next Senate Majority Leader, but their vote will be anonymous. There are currently 3 contenders: Texas Senator John Cornyn, Florida Senator Rick Scott, and South Dakota Senator John Thune. The significance of the outcome of the race for Republican Senate leadership cannot be overstated. Whoever wins the leadership position helps dictate President-elect Donald Trump's new term. Trump needs an ally to help approve his cabinet and administration appointments quickly so that he can deliver on the mandate voters gave him to fix the economy. There is no denying the reality of the old version of the GOP is dead. Voters no longer want a party beholden to forever wars, slow but steady illegal immigration, or globalist economics. We want American workers to feel empowered and fruitful in their labor, for America's borders to be secure, and for a full stop to unlimited funding for foreign wars that enrich the military-industrial complex and send Americans to die in foreign countries. It's a new political dawn, and our elected leaders should reflect this. The D.C. political class, however, already shows signs of wanting to install a leader who will likely curtail the incoming Trump administration. The first one is Texas Senator John Cornyn. Cornyn is the longest-serving senator in the race for Majority Floor Leader, with 4 terms under his belt. That's 24 years, by the way. The political landscape in Texas has changed since he came into office in 2002, and there are rumblings that he will face a pretty heated primary battle when he faces re-election in 2026. Cornyn is a longtime ally of Mitch McConnell and kicked off the 2024 presidential cycle by stating the GOP needed to look anywhere but Trump for its nominee. So why then is he up for the majority floor leader position? Well, because he's a never-Trumper redcoat. Republican Texas Agricultural Commissioner Sid Miller, whose name has also been floated alongside Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton as a possible primary opponent to Cornyn, told the caller in April that, quote, it's going to be pretty hard for him to get reelected in Texas. And then there's John Thune. Thune can comfortably be characterized as an anti-Trump Republican. During the 2024 Republican primary race, he refused to endorse Trump's candidacy, saying, quote, I'm hoping we have other options, end quote. He also urged Trump to drop out of the race and endorse Vice President Mike Pence for president less than a month before the 2016 election. And Trump ended up winning the election, if you remember. Thune stated that it would be in Trump's best interest to stay out of the Senate Majority Leader race by not backing any of the 3 candidates. Of course he said that. Quote, obviously, if he wants to, he could exert a considerable amount of influence on that. But honestly, I think my preference would be, and I think it's probably in his best interest, to stay out of that, Thune told CNBC. Thune generally supports removing barriers to global trade, such as tariffs, which have become a cornerstone of Trump's economic and foreign policy plan. Basically, he's a redcoat, and of course, that's exactly what Mitch McConnell would want. Now, remember, it was Mitch McConnell who the only good thing he did when Trump was president is push through a bunch of judicial nominees, which, of course, is the Senate's job. Really, the Senate is the HR department of the entire federal government. They're the folks that confirm all of the appointees and judges and all of that. So at least in that, Mitch McConnell did a good job. But everything else, the Trump agenda, the American First agenda, Mitch McConnell did his best to absolutely short-circuit everything. So the D.C. Republican establishment is trying everything that it can possibly do to short-circuit Donald Trump's new term as president. And it's the same thing. Never Trumpers who don't want conservatism, who don't like conservatives, who like forever wars, who love big federal spending programs, and they just want business to go as normal. You notice you didn't hear Mitch McConnell going all crazy when Biden was still in office. Well, Biden's still in office, we think. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't think so. I'm sure he doesn't know what planet he's on. But you never really did hear Mitch McConnell come out and forcibly argue against any of the Biden administration policies. The truth is, Mitch McConnell was probably in the back room doing deals with the Biden administration because that's what he's always done. So, I mean, we have a chance to get a conservative leader in the Senate. I hope that it's going to happen. I hope that it's possible, but it's I'm not all that optimistic. Well, we've got about a minute left in the program. I thought I'd leave you kind of on a funny note. Maybe you've heard about this. The Harris campaign blew about $1 billion. That's billion with a B. And they still owe about $20 million. And I quote, she raised and spent $1 billion in her losing presidential campaign and left behind a stunning $20 million debt. She can't even pay her employees. And she's the one that wanted to run the entire American economy. Kamala Harris can't even figure out how to run her own checkbook, much less the biggest economy in the world. Well, we've come to the end of another busy broadcast day on the program. Have a good rest of your week. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.